from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty, and I'm here with Queen of quickly changing the subject when things don't go his way, Chris Prunty, along with our continued special guest, Daniel Quinn. Gentlemen, how are we today?
Fantastic.
Well, on today's episode, a listener really wants us to talk about something that's not incredibly dark. So we're going to be venturing into the world of Solarpunk, where hopes and dreams and everything light is actually going to be the prevalent theme. Something that I think is actually going to be kind of difficult for us, all things considered. But let's get into the email. Jason sends us a very intelligent and creative email that says, I've just recently caught up to the most current episode of Worldbuild with us, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. The ideas that you spin together off the top of your heads are both impressive and inspiring. I've even had several moments of inspiration from my own stories and worlds just by listening, and I want to thank you for being both entertaining and thought-provoking. While The Land of a Thousand Mods was certainly a fun and unique take on the cyberpunk genre, it, like many other ideas, strayed a bit more on the depressing and darker sides. While there is nothing wrong with exploring those themes, especially when you make them so entertaining to do so, it's not everyone's cup of tea. So I would like to propose a bit of a challenge for you. For your next setting, why don't you try something a little bit more uplifting? A place where stories like slice of life, whimsy, and hope are the prevalent themes. The perfect genre of this type of setting, in my opinion, would be Solarpunk. A future opposite of the Thousand Mods where clean energy, little waste, abundant resources, and a love of plant life abound. Perhaps this is an alternate path the world could have taken after the apocalypse that caused the future of a Thousand Mods in the first place. Alternatively, Daniel's religious steam vent dwellers could have found a seed vault and successfully revitalized the world. Now, while I challenge you to stick to the uplifting themes, I understand that all places and settings have their own darkness. Things like heartbreak, loss, and failure could work well as foils to themes present in such upbeat setting. But I know you all like to subvert things and put a twisted spin on your worlds, so when you do decide to add some gruesome elements, perhaps you can make them a little bit less dystopian and more mystical or mysterious. Things like The Legend of Sleepy Hollow or Over the Garden Wall, which, aside, I'm breaking, I apologize, but that is such a great reference. Over the Garden Wall is like such a perfect little mini series, and it's so good, and not nearly enough people know about it.
Oh,
Anyway,
I remember that.
it's so good. The songs are great. The aesthetic is amazing. Everything's awesome. What?
Is
Sorry,
that by
Chris.
the
What'd you say?
Adventure Time guy?
No, it just has a similar CalArt aesthetic. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the new show that is by the Adventure Time guy, I'm not a fan of. I would actually not recommend it.
What was
Midnight
that?
Gospel?
It's on Netflix. It's called Midnight Gospel, I think.
Oh,
It's really just a podcast that's like an interview series, which is okay, but it's like, oh, this is not what I was expecting at all, and I'm like, it's all right, but I'm just not a fan of it. And anyway,
Did you watch
Over the
all-
Garden Wall would be great examples of adding a bit of horror to a hopeful genre while still keeping it whimsical. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. Thanks again for such an amazing podcast that's inspired me to create bigger and better worlds. I hope you're all well and looking forward to the next episode. Sincerely, Jason. P.S. Perhaps this Solarpunk world can be called the Land of a Thousand Pots. After all, you'll need a lot of them to plant everything everywhere. So yeah, that is in fact, as you've clicked on this title, you've noticed that is in fact the title of the podcast is Land of a Thousand Pots. So yeah, obviously that's what we're going with.
time to grow some plants.
Yeah, and Jason, thank you so much for your email. It's really awesome. I'm actually really excited to get digging into this particular setting. And if you do want to send your own, setting idea or your own show topic, you can always send that to worldbuildwithus@gmail.com, and we will definitely read it. Well, hold on. I will definitely read it and get back to you one way or the other. And so, anyway, I'm a little excited to get into this. Who wants to go first? What? Oh, God damn it! Let's start that trailer. So I'm excited to get into this episode. The breakdown, like all of our kind of premise episodes, are going to be we're each going to introduce 3 things into the world that are definitely true. And who wants to go first?
So I think it might make sense to talk a little bit about what solarpunk is as a genre, only because it's a relatively new genre.
Yeah, I'm less familiar with like solar punk texts for sure. Daniel, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So I'm not super familiar with particular works in solarpunk. So I did a little bit of reading on the genre, and it seems like there's actually 3 of these optimistic genres out there that have all kind of come into fruition in the past 10 years or so.
That's 3 too
And
many.
yeah, right. And so they're called Noble Bright, Hope Punk, and Solar Punk, right? And from what I understand, they're all variations really of utopian literature. And utopian meaning like it's not perfect, but it's essentially a good thing. You know, the society or the world is essentially good. And so we're telling stories that have to do with kind of an ethos or like some morality that comes from the writer. So just really quickly, Solarpunk, just like Jason was saying, obviously has like this positive outlook on climate change, and there's like a balance of human nature and or humanity and technology, and then there's like environmentalism. So those are like the main components of Solarpunk. For Hope Punk and Noble Bright, they're kind of similar. So I was looking for what's really the difference between the two. But it sounds like Noble Bright, at the bare minimum, you have individual people who can make a difference in the world, and you can have happy endings. So that's like the big thing about Noble Bright. It was apparently a response to like the grimdark of Warhammer. So shows like Shira or Adventure Time, you've got individuals who can stand up and make change in the world. Whereas Hope Punk is more about there may be an oppressive force in the world, and the world's like imperfect, but we can perpetually fight against it. So like utopia or the happy ending of Noble Bright isn't possible for Hope Punk, but you're always continually fighting for the possibility of a better world. So something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or like Angel, where it ends with them, marching off into the final battle, or even Pacific Rim, where you're bringing together a lot of people to fight this greater force, and so you're always trying to make the world better. So that's the 3 genres, and I think like if we pull from those themes, we'll probably get close to what Jason's looking.
Absolutely. That's actually pretty exciting because I mean, I as much as we talk about dystopian futures and everything like that, I am in general a pretty hopeful person. Like I think that there is an inevitability where kindness will win. It's just that when it comes to what I explore in fantasy settings, I mean, it's like what I always talk about. The best thing to fight against is evil, and like really oppressive evil at that. And so why not, like present that to be like, yeah, go fight that bad guy, that type of thing. Although, as we've talked about, kind of I do tend to stray on the depressing side a little bit, but
Hey, you gotta have Palpatine, right?
yeah, Big Papa Palps every day, all day.
I will say though that like for Chris and I's sake, like the granddaddy of all utopian fiction, at least for me, has got to be Star Trek.
Oh yeah,
the
perfect
Gene
library.
Roddenberry stuff, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. Look, I'm not a Trekkie. I'm not even a Star Trek fan, but I also understand that that is like humanity's best sense of a utopia for sure.
At least before Deep Space Nine.
Well, even Deep Space
And
Nine has
Picard.
a good message, but Picard does not.
All right, so enough Trek talk for now. So Daniel, do you want to go first for your idea?
Sure. So like I'm thinking about this kind of a world. I was thinking, well, one of the big questions you'll have is like, how do you govern it? So I don't know what we're going to decide, like whether this is a planet or it's a nation or galaxy or whatever it is. But I was thinking maybe in this world there are some people who are born, or maybe they're created in some way, who have so much empathy that like randomly and periodically, they actually swap bodies with people who have the most suffering in the world for a short time. And these people are the ones who are appointed to rule over whatever society we end up making.
That's really cool. So is that kind of suggesting like a Buddha type journey, or like a Siddhartha type journey where you have the richest person who then sheds all of that to go experience what it's like to be the poorest person available, that or the poorest person around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's
like they kind of like live secluded from society, but every now and then, because they're given this benefit of so much empathy, they're pulled into other people who have the worst situation.
that's really cool. I really like that. Also, this isn't one of my like primaries, but when you said you weren't sure if we were doing a planet or a country or whatever,
Yeah.
I suddenly wanted to do like a federation of or like a federation
Ooh.
of planets. You know, like
Federation, you
because
say?
yeah,
Yes.
but not like a Starfleet or anything like that.
Yeah.
But something
Okay.
along the lines of something to denote that there's an interconnectivity between planets and stuff like that. I think that'd be
Okay.
kind of fun.
So then
Uh,
maybe like these people, like there's one on a planet, one per planet, and they get pulled to different planets, and collectively though they have to govern the whole.
yeah, I actually have no plans for governance, so I mean that's totally fine for me. And also, I like the idea that the people with the most empathy are the ones who are in charge. You know, like
Yeah,
that's hopeful even.
What a
that's my goal.
novel
That was
concept.
my goal.
Yeah, yeah, it is the novel concept. You're right.
Yeah,
How
and I wanted
crazy
to
is
call them
that?
the people behind the veil.
Cool.
I do have something that I wanted to be like a core founding of this, but I wasn't sure if it would have been depressing. I thought it was hopeful. And
Let's hear it. Let's hear what you think is hopeful.
oh Jesus. Uh,
Is this going to be another hour where we sit down and like have therapy with Chris? Is this going to be another one of those?
do, 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 do.
Let's learn about Chris today, everyone.
It's great. One of our listeners is just my therapist. I Venmo her every now and then, and she sends me notes. The basis of the world, what I came up with talking about recycling and kind of learning from our mistakes, I thought of a world that was, in fact, a simulation.
Really?
Yeah, and it is something that we did to ourselves after a catastrophic event, rather than wait for us for the world to heal, for things to move on, and for us just to release ourselves. We have allowed the planet or whatever to heal, and this is kind of like our species timeout box where we have to learn from our mistakes.
Oh,
And
that's so cool.
we're just kind of repeating these cycles. Like it's still the inhabitants just living through a multitude of lives and experiences. And every time the idea is that when they eventually get released, they'll have all that experience. They'll have all that knowledge of, I lived 100 lifetimes. I lived in a utopia. I need to try and make it here.
Wow. But that sounds really cool because, like, if I was thinking of how I would tie it together with my own, maybe the people like who are behind the veil are the ones not in this virtual reality, so they kind of have to dip in and out. Well, so they're maintaining what's going on, like the system that's keeping this virtual reality in place while the world heals. But they've got to still keep in touch with the people who are living in the reality.
So they're like Neo, but they're not rebelling against robots. They're just
Yeah,
ending the machine.
like inverse Neo, basically.
Hmm.
And the reason that they have so much empathy is because they are aware of what the actual world is like,
Yeah,
that kind of
like
thing.
they
Oh
they're
yeah.
programmers of it, maybe.
Yeah. Well, no, but I'm talking about the real world, you know,
Oh,
like
oh,
that
oh,
is
right. Yeah, because it's all
yeah.
been ruined. Yeah.
Yes. So they're one of the few people who know like this is what's actually going on. I
Mhm.
don't want this to repeat itself, so let's go ahead and try and, get this over with. Oh
Oh,
man.
that's
Okay.
cool. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
That's a really cool idea.
I was
Um
worried that that would be depressing with the whole destroyed planet.
No, I think it makes sense because it's about perpetually making the world better. So the world's healing. It's not like in a bad state. We're
yeah.
trying to heal it from what we did to it, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to acknowledge that this evil does in fact exist and that we're actively fighting against it. You know,
Mhm.
like that is, I think, an important message if we're going to be going for this kind of hopeful future. Well, that kind of actually, I'm not really sure how this is going to tie into one of my tenets that I have here,
Mhm.
but I had this idea that all technology or the primary method of technology is essentially genetically modified plants.
Oh, I love
So
that.
yeah, I mean, if I was thinking like really lush greens and trees and stuff like that, where all the plants are bred for specific purposes, and because it's like like it's scientific meddling in the best way possible, because everything is essentially an entirely natural, and green method of doing so.
I mean, we could make that work with Chris's thing because maybe it's not like maybe it's a virtual reality, but it's virtual in the sense that it's like plants creating an induced like hallucinogen for the entire planet.
Or
Uh,
it could be just like our real world is a simulation. Wake up.
Well, actually, what I was thinking is there's been some real advancement in terms of how we understand how plants work and how forests work. Like
Mhm.
we always used to think that plants were essentially just individual creatures with their own roots and everything like that, or organisms, I should say. But we've understood recently that there is this kind of underground system where acts as a connector to multiple trees. Like there was a study done where if there were one type of tree on its own, it would not thrive nearly as well as if there were a biodiverse culture. Like there
Mhm.
was a specific second tree that made that, like the pairing between the two of them made the ecosystem much stronger and the trees much healthier as a result. So if we talk about the idea of interconnectivity, I think that we could talk about this idea that there is some kind of technology that we are currently not aware of where we finally master this interconnectivity. I mean, again, if we want to talk about that type of theme of togetherness and
Mhm.
collectivism, I think that we look at plants as a good basis for that.
I think that's so cool because that makes sense. Like, and it's a different way of looking at technology now, and in terms of rendering it for like the story or the fiction, like you'll have really fun ways of rendering it if it's all like plant life.
Yeah, and I think aesthetically as well. I mean, I'm thinking of like just giant lush forests and stuff like that, where it's basically Fern Gully if Fern Gully didn't suck,
Whoa. I like
The best
Philly.
look, the best
Big
thing
Bird,
about Fern Gully is
Texas,
who?
the villain.
Oh yeah, actually I was going to just call him Tim Curry, but yes. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Daniel, the fact that you know that villain like is kind of surprising and
He has
a
a
little
tattoo.
disturbing.
I love Fern Gully.
Really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Oh my god.
Oh, that is Never Ending Story Hope Punk or Noble Bright?
I
I
don't
guess it's
know.
Noble Bright.
It could be. I
Oh, weird.
mean,
Yeah, because I guess they
yeah.
triumphed and there's a
Yeah.
happy ending at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Okay.
cool. Sorry, divergence.
No, no, no. That's our entire podcast is a fucking divergence, Daniel. It's fine.
Oh no, I shouldn't have done that.
Shouldn't have done what?
Apparently, there's Rule 34 of Hexus.
Oh,
Oh
oh
no.
no.
Why would you do that? Why would you do that live on the
Don't do
podcast?
that to Never Ending
I
Story. Don't
wanted
be
to see
there.
what he looked like, and it was just there.
Is it just Tim Curry? You know what? No. I don't want to know. I don't want to. I don't. You know what? No. I'm gonna
It's
just roll
horrible.
into my
Straight
second
up
point.
horrible.
Nope. Speaking of villains, okay, I have to do a two-parter on mine because it's
Okay.
important. Um, so the the main idea that I had when it comes to conflict and everything like that, or at least like the main values of this world and culture that we're kind of creating here, I wanted to make it so the culture values art and love as their highest and most honorable pursuits. And I
Mhm.
mean like a romantic type love as well. So it's like a bringing together of people is one thing that they find to be is one thing that is most valuable to this culture. And so I wanted to say that the worst thing that can happen to someone in this setting is you can break their heart or you can ruin their creativity.
Oh,
I,
nice.
I, like that is the absolute worst thing that can happen. So I'm like even thinking that you can take out catastrophic death or something like that. That's something that cannot happen in this particular setting. And I
Yeah,
think
maybe.
having a I think having Chris's simulation might actually help with that in some way.
Yeah.
Like we have the technology and everything like that that can help explain why it doesn't happen, but also there's some manipulation behind the screen as well.
Mhm. No, that makes sense. Like getting rid of the typical. Because I mean, I imagine if this is a a virtual reality where resources and such are provided for, it's kind of post scarcity. So we're not really worried about the basic stuff like, starving or war or death, like you're saying, because they're living in the simulation, that's run by whatever plant entity this is. So then what else do we have to worry about? It's the same sort of things that we worry about in Star Trek, which is our careers, and our productivity and our creativity.
That's exactly where I wanted to go with it as well. Like, because the main question is, where does conflict come from at that point, right? Where you already have all the resources, and because there's such an emphasis on the collective, on coming together. Well, what's the hardship then? Like, how do you create strife and conflict? And it's through romantic conflict, where I imagine that some of the bigger, I mean, here's the thing. Actually, this is going to be an aside. I've been really into. Actually, it's not going to be an aside. Fuck it. I've been really into this anime recently called Sing Yesterday for Me, and it's essentially just like a kid, or not even a kid. It's like it's a person who's just out of college trying to figure out his life and also getting into all sorts of romantic entanglements. And honestly, that's kind of what I had in mind when I was thinking about, like, this is the worst thing that can happen, and this is the drama that we're going to experience, is how you connect with someone, and how meaningful is that connection and the connections that you make. That's kind of what I was going with.
Mm-hmm. So relationships is like currency.
It's not currency, Daniel. That's just sinister. Like, now we're getting deeply away from punk.
I don't mean it in a monetary sense.
No, I think that in a sense, the romantic levels, or in a sense, the connections that you have with people are more valuable to you than anything else, because everything else is taken care of.
Yeah.
So you have two pursuits essentially. You can pursue the romantic, you can pursue the creative, and those in this society anyway are very valuable. They're like, oh, that is how we look at people and be like, hey, that person has a deep and loving and caring relationship. That's a person I can respect. And also, it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic. I just realized I came at this thing as in a romantic sense, but it can just be like, hey, this person is very friendly and has connections and has deep and meaningful, intimate relationships.
Well, like platonic, like loyalty, you mean, like, and
Yeah,
faithfulness to other people.
yeah, and also, but that doesn't necessarily have to be like despotic in a way, like where it's, oh, this person has fealty for me, but it's a matter of, no, it's not fealty, it's kinship, it's connection. It is something like, I feel so strongly towards this person because we share a bond of togetherness. It's family
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah, like, I mean, if I think even like I'm a freelancer, right? So I have other freelancers I work with who are really, I've worked with for many, many years. And so I have a really close relationship to them. And even though we're like bound together by the pursuit of like profit, there's this fealty to each other in the sense that we're not going to screw each other over, and we care about how we end up performing, that kind of, bond.
Yeah, bonds. That's the word I'm looking for. Bonds, absolutely. Bonds is what I'm looking for. And I'm gonna have to go early again. I apologize, but
Burn them all out.
no, well, yeah, I'm just gonna get it all out there. But it actually, because I thought of the villain for this setting first, and then kind of retroactively did it. But I have the bad guy for the setting. I have the evil one, because I wanted to kind of get that out of the way. And it is an interdimensional being who can only come to people in their dreams.
Mm.
He is the breaker of hearts and the eater of imagination. He is the man in gray, the man in the top hat. And
Oh.
I like to think of him as a collective nightmare where, you might have a bad dream every now and again, but it doesn't become horrifying until you describe it to someone and they say, wait a minute, I had that dream. I had that same character in the dream. I know that person that you're talking about. And this is my villain. This is the one who is like, hey, he's in charge of breaking hearts. He's in charge of destroying creativity. And the way that I wanted to do it is I wanted to make it so he doesn't do anything directly. He's more of an influence more than anything else. He only leads to self-destruction, right? if you listen to that part. And yeah, that's it, but again, it's kind of like a symbol of man's collective brutality as well. But
Mhm.
also, I just wanted to make him a weird interdimensional like nightmare monster.
I like that because he's not like an active force. He's really like making us make bad decisions at the end of the day. So it's not like you've got this villain running around doing terrible things. He's more like a temptation to make us make the wrong choice.
Absolutely. And obviously I think that he lays influence on a little bit thicker with some individuals, over others.
Mhm.
But I had that in mind where he's very subtle in his manipulations a lot of the time.
And you said he's the man in gray.
Yeah, I just had him like imagine him being like a very thin, tall man with a top hat, someone who kind of has to lean forward and stuff like that. I just like totemic images, and because this is actually what we can do as well, because everything else in the world is so green and lush with like technology and plants and everything like that, having him come off as like a weird grayscale where almost like he's made out of the static on old TVs, like
Oh,
that's
I
what
like that.
he's made of. It also shows that there is some kind of like offness to him compared to the rest of the setting.
I think I can riff off of that with another
Go.
one. So I was thinking like so I'm thinking back to what Chris was saying that this is kind of an oasis that's rebuilding in while humanity kind of sleeps, and now we've got this entity outside of that influences them to make bad decisions. So I'm thinking, well, what's the punishment for people who do bad things in this reality? So I thought maybe the only punishment that can be fair is exile. So if for whatever crimes there are, the only punishment is exile. So people are exiled from this reality or this oasis back into the world that's still healing. So what if that villain he appears to people in the reality as this interdimensional like force, but what if he is an exile or was an exile, and so his influence is coming from the world of ruin, like literally.
Oh, okay.
I
Hold on.
like that.
I like that idea a lot, and I'm going to expand on it.
Okay.
He is an exiled seeker of the veil.
Oh, like
So
an empath.
yeah, so he's a broken empath who
Oh.
is like like the veils, they can all kind of see what the world actually is, right?
Mhm.
But this is one who can do that, but instead of deciding to try and make humanity better,
Makes
he's
them
the one who's influencing things for the bad.
Oh, nice. Okay, I love it. That nails it.
Yeah, and obviously like the way that he comes into, wait a minute, are the seekers of the veil, are they just gods like to the people within the
Um,
simulation?
the way I wanted it to be, I didn't want them to be different than other people. Like, I wanted certain people to be either born with or distilled with this special empathetic power, and they're
Okay.
taken care of, like, in maybe a separate part of the compound. But the curse for having that power is you have to swap places with someone who suffers. So you're seeing into the world of, So I want them to be regular people. It's just that because otherwise like the he I wouldn't want if he's going to be like this exile who is one of them. I wouldn't want him to be innately evil because I think that runs against Noble Bright that even the villains can be redeemed. So
I
there must be
agree.
something wrong with him.
Right, and the more that I think about it, the more that I think that if you turn them into gods, then you
Mhm.
make it more difficult for people to aspire to be that level of empathy
Yeah,
or to have that level of empathy in a way. So I
yeah,
think it makes a lot more sense that we do kind of keep them grounded. Plus, I just kind of like the idea like that this particular, broken empath, the
hmm,
man in gray, he he just is broken in his own way, but and he's taking that out on people,
yeah, yeah. Like maybe he has
and
some reason for it, that we don't know about.
yeah, we will do that. But also, I do want to emphasize the fact that I don't want people to be murdered or like
Yeah.
die by his hand, because I think that there's been a lot of conversation recently around the idea that there's this idea of the redeemable villain,
Hmm.
but the acts that he does are truly irredeemable. It's like, hey, I'm sorry I murdered like 7,000 people, but I had a sad backstory, so it's all cool, right? And then
Right.
Got a
people are just
point.
like, yeah, it's
Kylo
fine. He's like,
Ren.
no, I want it to be like, hey, I just made people make bad decisions, and there's no totally lasting consequence for that. It just hurts in the moment and hurts for a while, that type of thing.
I mean, he may have some mission that's in opposition to the mission of healing the world, and maybe he thinks what he's doing is correct, and maybe what the reason why he's making people make bad decisions is so that this whole simulation ends, or maybe like the project ends. And I don't know why, but that would make sense.
I have an idea.
Maybe. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, and this is taken from Star Trek, but it's easy to be a saint when you're in paradise. And his entire point is, I can still tempt people. The simulation isn't proving anything. It's easy to be perfect when there's nothing truly on the line.
Yeah.
I'm taking people out of it because the only way we're going to learn is if we're doing it with real consequence.
That's actually kind of where I wanted to go with it, where he sees himself as a necessary evil. Like, this is just part of the process. That's a way smarter way than that I was going to put it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I've rambled on long enough. What other ideas do you guys have? What other tenets of the world do we have here?
Mine is more of a thematic kind of thing that I wanted to do that I sometimes like in sci-fi. I wanted it to be where, for whatever reason, and maybe it's a hard limit in the simulation, maybe it's just there's technology that's grown against it, kind of like in Dune, but melee weapons are pretty much the weapons people use. No one's big about ranged weapons or guns.
Can I take that a step further? Because
Yeah.
I would like to take that idea and be like, well, why are they using weapons in the first place, right? And then I think that there is a way, and honestly, it's because they're ceremonial more than anything else. It's kind of like a display, or like it's their outlet for creativity is through this expression of martial prowess or dance even, but it's like it's not violent and it's not inherently violent, essentially, right?
Yeah, so it's like a practice, the almost like a martial art, in the sense that it's done not just for maybe for self defense, but also like for exercise and for understanding how to be in tune with nature. If you want to go like the kind of cliched route, because maybe it involves like traveling through the crazy underbrush of this like virtual jungle, so you've got to be able to traverse it, and having some physical strength through these melee weapons and tools is part of that.
Yeah, that's cool. And plus I think that we could probably do something like have the weapons all be deeply ceremonial, and representative of certain ideals and strengths and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like that. And maybe the weapons themselves are like living things, like they're plant life of some kind.
Oh, that's super cool. Like, you have to cultivate your own. I mean, that
Yeah,
actually kind of ties in with my everything is a GMO, right?
yeah.
Where imagine that you have to cultivate your weapon in order for you to get good at it.
Commune with it. Like maybe by cultivating it, you get a closer connection to the earth.
My bonkai
Yeah.
is a redwood.
There you go. Right. That one's
What did you say?
I said my bonkai is a redwood.
I don't think Daniel knows what a bonkai is, but
I
I
don't
do.
know.
Laughing and he loved it.
That was
I assume it's sexual.
Oh, Jesus.
yeah, exactly. It was a polite laugh at best.
No.
Anyway, that's actually pretty cool. What do you think about that, Chris? I don't want to take that away from you, because like, what is that kind of what you had in mind, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I just wanted to have something about like, even if it's ceremonial or anything, you could still have it be where like in the perfect world kind of thing, kind of like how GI Joes wouldn't shoot bullets at each other, they would shoot lasers. He-Man, they all had swords, but when the hell did anyone even get cut?
Right. They barely used them. They were techno swords.
Yeah, to be
Like,
fair, you're also thinking about the 80s ones where
The
it's
best
like,
ones.
yeah, the newer, I'm pretty sure the newer He-Mans do show like a little bit more. Like, I've seen the origin of Skeletor, the new
oh yeah.
cartoon version, and it's grisly. So,
Oh my god. Can we talk about
yeah.
the greatest movie ever made, though, by human beings?
Roll.
Is it Pacific Rim?
It's Masters of the Universe, the live action
Oh
He-Man movie.
no,
Greatest movie
no!
ever made. I stand by that. It is a class S above an A. I will watch it forever, and I love it.
But
Okay, as long
anyhow,
as we to be fair, we have established that trash is the best genre. So
Right.
so yeah, okay. I will accept that as your reality, Daniel, not
Excellent.
mine.
Excellent.
Okay.
no, but I'm originally part of the idea that I had was like to go from Dune, kind of like how they had to do that weird knife battle
Oh
slow to
yeah.
stab through the shield. I was
Mhm.
thinking maybe something that just keeps people alive, like not in the like you could do the gross body horror where like oh you cut off a limb it regrows, but maybe people just go all right, so the only way to really win in a fight is to knock you out with a hammer, or like not brutally but just kind of like boom.
Well, I think my pushback on that would be, why are people fighting in the first place? Because in the setting that I have in my mind, that's not something that people would necessarily do,
We
Mhm.
right?
could we could make it work in the sense that so like I'm thinking like I like to do boxing, right? And when you're fighting with someone, it's not an aggression thing that you're doing. Like it's actually about self-control. So I wonder if the fighting they do with these melee weapons is about learning how to control themselves and thus like be in control of their environment. So like especially since the plant, is connected to the earth, it's alive. So maybe they do kind of like a sparring more than it's actual fighting, and that's part of their culture.
Yeah, or maybe it's like a display of strength and skill
Yeah,
type thing,
yeah,
where
that's
it's
what I
like,
mean. Yeah.
well, no, I mean it's not like it's not like they're fighting each other. It's more like, hey,
Oh,
watch what I can do with this. That like that is an impressive display. It's a dazzling display. It's like, oh, you can cut the blade of grass into four even smaller slices, but I'm just going to lift up this boulder and toss it over that mountain, that type of thing. Obviously, those are very blunt ways of putting it, but that's kind of the idea that I'm having in mind.
Well, we were also talking about how this might be on more than just a stage of like one planet or anything, even if it's inside a simulation. What if you can still use a weapon for peace?
yeah,
Yeah,
Like,
no, I
yeah,
and that's kind of what we're getting at here. Yeah.
okay.
Or alternatively, rather than have it be a purely, aesthetic kind of display, you could have this thing more what Daniel was saying, where it's like, hey, you're sparring essentially, right? But nothing is ever violent, and
yeah.
maybe there's something to where there is a level of shame involved, where if you do hurt someone accidentally,
Mhm.
then it's like, oh, you're looked at really poorly in
I
a
mean,
way.
that's even true in boxing. Like if you
Yeah,
hurt, if, like let's say I accidentally like hit them with the bottom of my glove and I like hurt their nose, shatter their nose, I'd be really, ashamed of that because it means I lost control.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So okay, so we can do one of those ways for sure. Okay, I was pushing back on it, Chris, but I'm now sold,
I'm
thoroughly
also
sold.
I'm also really thinking of the monks from Kill 6 Billion Demons,
Which
like
ones? There's
the
a couple.
that is a lot. Uh, the ultimate pacifist monks that also have the most deadly martial arts.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, like Solomon David.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. By the way, if you're not reading Kill 6 Billion Demons, Google what Kill 6 Billion Demons is, and you'll probably read it in like a weekend, even though it's been going on for 7 years. It's amazing and continues to be amazing.
Everything about it.
Um, everything about it. I want to do like a deeper dive on the podcast about how good the world building is and how unique everything is, because goddamn, it's so good. Even though it's like clearly derivative of certain things, but like you don't even give a fuck because everything else is so brilliant and good. But anyway,
I want to
um
interview them.
I
Ooh,
know. Look, if anyone can get this to Abaddon, just let him know that we want to interview them. Like, please, that'd be awesome. Anyway,
Oh, I thought it was a
enough,
pair.
enough groveling. Let's move on. Are we? Did anyone not go yet?
I have number three.
You have your
Um,
number three. Go ahead.
yeah, so this could tie some more things up. We talked about the interconnectedness of plants that we didn't know about in the past, and I had this. statement that was basically the connectedness of the world has made it such that there's no longer a meaning to distance. So I wanted to like unpack that. So I'm thinking, and we're still going with the concept that this is on multiple planets, right? So if that's the case, maybe the regenerative awakening that's happening to heal the world in each of these worlds or wherever is because the plants themselves are not just connected to each other within a planet, they're actually connected to each other across distances in space. So the plant life that we know of, we didn't understand that it's actually alien in the sense that it's connected across planets. So it's not only possible to be in this little virtual reality where they're healing humanity, but they can travel to other planets through the root networks that are intergalactic, basically.
It's universal.
Yeah,
Like, we all think of like carbon life forms and everything like that, but the real universal life form is plant life, and
yeah,
that's pretty fucking cool, Daniel. That's awesome.
yeah. So like, and so like, it's possible to awaken this healing process on any planet.
Oh my God, Daniel, you're saying that hope can bloom anywhere?
Yes, I am.
Literally? Yeah. Woo! Oh, we got
There you go,
there.
Solarpunk.
We got
Damn
there.
it! I
Fuck
had a
yeah.
solar joke, and now I can't.
Do it, do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know what you have to do in Solarpunk?
What?
Go ahead.
Right side.
Oh, god damn
Mm.
it.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. You should have saved that. Actually, you should have saved it for later.
I didn't think it would come up naturally.
You could force it, I'm sure.
I do that too often. But
Okay.
Daniel, that sounds dangerously close to the spore drive.
Oh god, don't make me vomit in my mouth. Don't make me vomit in my mouth. And that was stolen. I forget what that was stolen from, but it's stolen from
Video
really, really sci-fi. Oh, video game too? Oh lord. Don't get me started on Discovery. I cannot. I just can't. It is,
Even.
I'll say one thing, and you send your hateful emails. Picard and Discovery and all the new Treks, you know why they're not Trek? Because they're not utopian fiction, and that's what Trek is.
Okay, we could go
So,
into a long discussion about that because
and we won't.
Ah!
Discovery. So you're saying that Discovery and Picard are like the prequel trilogy for Star Wars?
They're the grimdark of they're literally grimdark. That's what they are, which is not Star Trek.
they're not Noble Bright.
No.
All right, great.
He stopped recording a minute ago, and
I feel like this is the conspiracy. I feel like you guys got together before the podcast and they're like, this is how we're going to bring Star Trek into this again.
We did.
Like multiple times.
Noble Bright in Star Trek is what I think of whenever someone says Noble Bright.
Star Trek. I mean, like, I was just watching Measure of a Man. Remember that episode with a Data? And it's like,
No.
So I think this is important though, because it has to do with the whole three genres, right? Like, it's an episode where there's not any fighting, no one throws a punch. It's literally a bunch of conversations where they're trying to prove that Data is a human being and he deserves human rights, just like anyone else. That's the whole episode. It's a conversation. And that's
a philosophical debate.
Yeah, it's a literal debate. There's no fighting. It's all very cordial. They take turns. His own friend has to prosecute against him because they're trying to have a fair discussion, right? And that's at the heart of utopian ideas, that we can come to conclusions without lifting swords and chopping each other's heads off, which is literally what happens in Picard.
Okay. So I want to sit and appreciate the fact that is I also really love that type of storytelling where it does, like, it's not about throwing a punch, it's not about the action, it's about like the dialogue going back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Like, one of my favorite directors of all time is Alfred Hitchcock, and one of my favorite movies by him is Rope. And Rope is like literally just a dinner party and a conversation that goes back and forth, but it's so tense, and there's such like a buildup and like a thrill to the conversation. I love it. Like, I love stuff like that, right?
There's an intellectual stuff that's at stake in that case, and you don't have to resort to some base violence to get it across.
But it's so much harder. It's so much harder to create something that's genuinely intellectually stimulating that doesn't rely on, like conflict and like big dumb explosions.
Right.
like but and like I don't mean to be dismissive of that type of fiction, but realistically it is actually harder to come up with conflict that doesn't involve like, hey, I'm going to punch you and you're going to punch me back,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
But honestly, I think that's kind of where the fun lies in certain fiction,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh man, this is way more interesting than than a sword fight, is the verbal repartee between two people,
Mm-hmm.
or a genuine clash of ideals. And honestly, I think that in a lot of ways, physical confrontation in certain genres is a representation of a clash of ideals, right? Like you're not crossing swords, you're crossing ideologies. And I think when you see that, and when that makes for a much stronger version of conflict, as opposed to, hey, I'm punch you, you don't punch me back. All right, cool, we're fighting.
That couldn't be better said. I agree.
Whew. Okay. What else do we have left? Is that it? Have we emptied all the chambers?
Did Chris do all three?
I did all two.
Oh, you gotta do a third one.
Oh
Yeah, you
shit.
gotta do a third one.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
All right, let's help Chris come up with one live on the podcast.
Do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do
We'll
it.
wait. I'll leave the pauses in too. Go ahead. We'll wait for you.
Well, could you tell us a little bit more about the compound? This the virtual compound, maybe?
So the idea of itself, I got from a comic that I read like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. At this point, uh, it was Saturday morning breakfast cereal. If you've ever heard it.
Oh yeah.
And in it, it's where these aliens come across a monument, and it's saying, "Do not weep for us, for in our minds we are eternal." And
Mm.
there is just a digital vault where time is meaningless. They could live 7 billion years in mere moments when it's digital. So I just thought of that of how long would it take mankind to learn its lesson.
Oh, I love that.
But
Interesting.
uh, I guess it would still be a very hopeful story because, like, who decides when we're ready? Is it us? Is it the people behind the veil? Did I say veal?
You did. You did.
Is it people behind the veil?
Oh no. Oh no. I'm sorry. Now I'm just thinking of just the implications of people behind the veal.
God
It's
damn
like
it! I
this.
was
Yeah.
super into it. I was super into where he was going to.
I know.
Big veal. No, but like, what happens if this society, when it was like 95% ready, was released into the world? It would still be that bit of conflict. I think that would take you to like Utopia Star Trek levels of where it's just like, we're not perfect, but damn it, we're trying.
Yeah. So is Q like the man in gray in a sense?
Yeah.
Stop talking about Star Trek. God damn it.
I mean, that's
So
why Q sent the Borg
he
at
did. Yeah.
Starfleet to advance them and show them that, they weren't the biggest person in the playground.
To be fair to Rob and non-Star Trek people, Q is kind of like a trickster god who actually cares about humanity and wants to make them better, but he's not above like possibly destroying them in the process.
Okay. So I think one of the most interesting questions that you brought up in that kind of conversation is, who are the ones who decide when the simulation ends?
Oh.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
I mean part of this not the decision, but part of we know the process is complete. Maybe not for humanity, but for the world is when it heals.
Hey, wait a minute. I got a different idea.
Mhm.
Maybe the man in gray is the one who decides. And so
Oh.
the whole point is to convince him that humanity is ready. And every time another person becomes, convinced by his temptations, he's like, "Oh, guess we're not ready yet." Okay.
Maybe he isn't one man. Maybe he was one empath who went wrong, but now he's part of a group that is trying to prevent it. Like that's protecting the off switch in a sense.
I See, okay, I'm going to push back on that because I love the idea of a singular entity,
Mhm.
even though I think that maybe he's a collective in the sense that he's a collective consciousness.
Oh, okay, that
But
works.
yeah, like, but I don't want it to be where he is, like, oh, it's because part of the strength of his image is
Mhm.
he is the same. Sorry, everyone sees the same figure,
Oh, well,
right?
maybe then he appears to them like he uses the simulation to be a singular thing, you know?
Right, but he's actually a collective consciousness.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, I can I
He's a
can I
symbol.
can support that.
yeah.
All right. All right.
Love it.
Gentlemen, I feel pretty hopeful about where this series is going. What about you?
Heyo.
I'm excited. And once Chris, I feel like once Chris, when you set up the outside world that's in ruin and the world that's the sleeping humans that are healing, I'm like, okay, now I can totally picture this. And
Mm.
then when we made it like or interstellar, like that just kicked it up a notch too. So like I'm really super into it.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about next episode where we get into like conflict and factions and stuff like that. I think
Yeah.
that's going to be kind of interesting. Although, man, there's a lot to talk about here. Ah,
Mhm.
okay. Although, like I said before, it is going to be very difficult because it's much harder to do intellectually stimulating back and forth conflict than I'm punch you.
Did you
I'm
hear that,
punch you so
Picard?
good. Yeah.
His name's Shaban, I believe. He needs to hear that.
um,
Oh man!
I,
Look, I don't watch Star Trek, but even I know Picard sucks because I watch the Red Letter Media
Oh,
reviews
oh, wasn't that
of it,
amazing?
and
and
it
it's like
told you how to feel.
the one episode where it's like this is a 17-minute fight, and it's like, oh, that's dumb. That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
I've never seen a worse sci-fi than Picard. Honestly, I don't think I
Look,
have.
look, I know that. Look,
Have you
I don't
seen
know
Lex?
nothing about nothing when it comes to Star Trek. I know that Star Trek should never have a 17-minute fight scene.
Right?
I know that.
That just isn't right.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Unless Worf is involved,
Yeah, then it's fine.
and it's
Unless
about
I'm hearing,
honor.
look, unless I'm hearing bum 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 bum
Yeah,
bum
yes,
bum bum
exactly.
bum, like it should never have it.
And usually after the fight, Worf starts crying because he's in touch with his emotions. You know?
So
Uh,
many emotions.
oh, hey, do you other dumb Star Trek things that I just so happen to know? Wasn't there that time that Worf got like struck by a flimsy barrel and got paralyzed, and then he wanted his son to kill him? Isn't that a thing that
Yes,
happened?
yes, because they don't know how to handle curing their wounded because they leave them to die honorably.
Yes.
Right.
Oh
Okay.
god, I love
Because
Star Trek.
I've seen that GIF. I've seen the GIF where it's like, look at that cardboard barrel that just crushes Worf's spine. Apparently.
It was filled with tungsten.
Oh.
It was a Bunsen barrel.
Oh my! All right, that'll do it for this episode of World Build with us. I am very excited to kind of get into the meat and potatoes a little bit more of this world. It's interesting. It's definitely something that we're not used to, and I'm excited. Jason, thanks so much for suggesting this topic. And if you want to suggest your own topic or your own prompt or anything like that, you can always send us an email at worldbuildwithus@gmail.com, or you can send us a tweet or a DM at Let's Worldbuild on the Twitter machine. And yeah, I mean, that'll wrap it up for this week. Remember that we love you very much. Stay safe and look on the bright side. See, that's how you force it. That's how you force it.